Hi everyone, it's Cindy. Welcome back to Studioloo. I'm here today with another journal flip through from the fairy collection. This is the Swan Fairy, and this is a puzzle front journal. So let me open up the tie here. This is just a lovely little soft blue lace that ties it closed. It is attached through a metal eyelet on the back, which I'll show you. So this is a hand-painted vintage book. This is a larger book. I think it's about 10.5 by 7. And as you can see, I've used a fairy puzzle on the front. I've sealed the whole puzzle together, and I've firmly attached it. It will not go anywhere. And I've added some brass brads just for some nice kind of decorations on the corners. We've got this swan with this fairy on back, and then these two little baby swans with these little baby fairies. And then on the spine you'll see 3 visible bindings and an eyelet up top here that holds on to this long beautiful spine dangle. So I did not hold back in what I've provided for you on these spine dangles. I went into my over a decade old supply of jewelry making supplies, beautiful findings, lampwork beads, vintage jewelry, glass and gold beads, Swarovski crystals, semi-precious stones, brass wire beads, a little fairy wing here, all sorts of things, glass, charms, you name it. There's every kind of lovely thing hanging out on here. So on back you will also see some fairy dust here that I have added, and there's that brad that the eyelet I was talking about that holds your lace here. So let's take a look at the side view here. We've got crochet lace and eco-printed fabric, lots of beaded head pins that I've made and added here for charms, flowers and leaves and vintage beaded flowers, all sorts inside this journal that hang out to kind of give you a little bit of an idea. So let's hop inside and see. So this journal follows the same kind of theory of how the others open up, and you'll see a beautiful scrapbook paper here with a pocket with a tab. This is an authentic 1950s photo, and I have added fairy wings to this sweet little girl who's playing out in the dirt here. She looks so cute. We have a fairy song verse from A Midsummer Night's Dream, and inside here we have the woodpecker vintage field guide page and one of my cards and one of my little me's. So those just pop in there. Then this page is one of the fairy paper pages. You'll see these throughout the series. They are locally made paper that are all shimmery and sparkly, iridescent. Down the side we have some tulip lace and a button card pocket that holds onto this coffee dyed printout of this bit of public domain art of these little girls and fairies that were photographed. They're just really cute. And then here we have a little girl and a fawn in the woods at night. That's from a children's book page. We have some dyed paper collage here on a fairy book page. We have a squirrel, birds, and a cloud fairy. A little bit of delicate pink lace down the side. And then I've done more collaging on this side for writing space. We have a little fairy here who's sort of sprinkling fairy dust. This is from the Flower Fairies book. Fir tree, foxglove, forget-me-not, geranium, gorse, and guelder rose. This is some cabbage dyed sunburst paper that I've dyed. The Purity tarot card from the Fairy Tarot on some nice brown printed paper. It's got a very ornate kind of print to it. Hopefully you can see it there. And this is some fairy art on a tag with some of my hand spun yarn up top. There's also fairies on the back of that tag. Stenciling, and then a piece of fairy paper, and then I've used some of these large pages from the Fairyopolis book. The back is like stationery, and then this is like a large journal entry from Cicely Mary Barker, watercolors and beautiful fairies, and I really enjoy these pages, so I wanted to include them just as they were in their natural form. I didn't want to cut them up or anything. I've used many of them, but some of them I wanted to keep intact. Some little fairies here, and then just some fun collage-y paper. This is some eco-printed fabric with a beaded head pin on tea-dyed paper with a little butterfly. Some Shirley Barber fairies, from one of her fairy books. Cabbage dyed paper. This is a little fairy pocket here from a children's book page, and this is a little freeform style collage tag. Never was anything so beautiful. And then this is the Little Land poem with some fairies here. Avocado dyed paper, a collage page with some fun batik fabric down the side, a forest fairy here, more dyed paper collage, pink dyed paper with some wool locks that I dyed stitched here, and some eco printed fabric here. This is more of that beautiful fairy verse, and we have a fairy ring of fairies here. Cabbage dyed paper with a fabric tab. We have a little squirrel pocket on a collage Shirley Barber fairy page. This is one of my watercolors, a little seed pod here, and I've just added on a fairy. This paint is metallic, so hopefully you can see that on the watercolor paper. It's really fun. And that just tucks in here. And then we have a painted page here with a little fairy. Little fairies over here on some more tea-dyed paper. This is a Barker fairy with some fabric stitched down the side. Another Barker fairy. Little botanical there on some fairy paper that has this large collage pocket here. And this is from Fairyopolis on April 1st, talking about fairy footprints in her watercolors. So a little journal entry. Some stenciling. A journey full of surprises. This pocket's made from a page of Zelda and Esmeralda, which is a book about a fairy and her friendship with the dragonfly by a local Muskoka artist and author. This says a charming creature, and it is a collaged fairy tag, or sorry, journal card. More cabbage dyed paper. This is from the Flower Fairies book. Nightshade, Nightshade Berry, Oak, Old Man's Beard. Some stenciling on some dyed paper on a fairy book page with some fun sequined ribbon and a beaded head pin. Some more stenciling and some scrap dyed paper. And this is like a little fairy village of these fun little hill homes. And then some beautiful paper here, making a pocket for this stitched card. Has some, this is actually some real birch bark here that you can write on. And this is a little birds in a nest. These are stitch cards that I made in one of my fairy making ephemera videos. My fairy ephemera making videos. Sorry, I think I said that mixed up. Sorry. Fairy paper. This is handmade paper with some white flowers stitched down the side. Very textural and nice. This is from Fairyopolis. It is one of the pockets with the journal entry, and another full page of the stationery with this beautiful fairy from 23rd July. And that just tucks up on in here. This is from Teal and Tattered's Fairy Kit. This is some eco-printed paper with rose petals and some sequined black fabric up here. The Black Medic Fairy, the Song of the Stork's Bill Fairy. Cabbage dyed paper with some fun sort of quilted together fabric on the side. This is more fairy paper with this little pocket here, and it's a really beautiful paper. It's from the book cover of the Fairyopolis book, and this is a coloring book page from the Zelda and Esmeralda book. The book that I got was signed by the author and had some extras in it, so I wanted to include that as well. Some washi tape. This says Enchanting. These are cabbage dyed pages. This is a little inked page with a little fabric tab. This is one of my stackable acorn ephemera pieces from my shop. It's a little, or sorry, no, this one isn't from my shop. This is from another shop. I get mixed up. I have one that's similar that is a pine cone, and then I found this one after I uploaded my pine cone on Etsy, and I was like, oh, I have a spirit sister out there. And so I had to buy it because I totally forget whose digital this is. I'm so sorry. What a faux pas. Anyways, it's on cabbage dyed paper, and this is the ephemera piece, and it holds on to all these little sweet peas. Some acorn and oak leaves, a little moth, and a little turtle. cabbage dyed paper, stenciling, moths, and some fun fabric down the side. This, maybe it's hard to see everything going on here, but we have a whole fairy ring, bats and the moon, another fairy ring, all these plants, and like a fairy queen and fairy king. It's just beautiful fairy art. And on this side it says fairy dwellings, and we have a fairy riding on a moth catching a mosquito. Cabbage dyed paper, herb 2p fairy, iris, more cabbage dyed papers, the Believe in Magic tarot card, and this is sort of a fun, crinkly, rustic page. The Waldron's, Croydon, Surrey, British Fairy Folklore Society. So this is a note written by Cicely Mary Barker from the Fairyopolis book, and it just clips up here with this tarot card from the Fairy Tarot on the fairy paper. More cabbage dyed paper, Jack Go to Bed at Noon, The Song of the White Bindweed Fairy. This is a fabric cluster on my eco-printed paper. Little fairy pocket with a Cicely Mary Barker fairy, Bee Orchis, and The Song of the Tansy Fairy. And this is on some digital paper from the Teal and Tattered Fairy Kit. Another handmade page with a little beaded head pin at the bottom on these stitched flowers. The blue fairy paper with a botanical pocket here, and this large, this is an Eric Kincaid illustration from a fairy book with some botanicals up top and cabbage dyed paper on the back. Oh, and some iridescent Velux type velour, and some botanicals. Another Teal and Tattered page. This is a pretty blue page, and I added this little bee sort of booklet on one side and a little fairy with mushrooms on the other, and that just clips onto this page with a rusty paper clip. And some of my eco-printed paper. This is a vintage book page with illustrations by Raymond Shepard from an Enid Blyton book called Adventures with Pip. And this is cabbage dyed with some of my hand spun yarn stitched to the side. That's the Light tarot card from the Fairy Tarot on a painted page with fairies. And this is a Warwick Goebel illustration journal card. Unicorns and painted iridescent writing space. This is a little tuck spot that I watercolored with metallic paint. It was from like a fairy coloring book on some beautiful digital paper, and this is like a piece of stationery with a verse about the Fairy Queen. That just tucks up in there. Beautiful digital paper. This is from the cover of the Zelda and Esmeralda book, and this is like a little woodland tag with some badgers underground on coffee dyed paper. There is a chestnut fairy, blackberry fairy, some sari fabric on the side of some tea-dyed paper, apple blossom fairy, bugle, journal tarot card from the Fairy Tarot, Shirley Barber fairies. This is an Eric Kincaid illustration of a kingfisher with some mushrooms, and it's a piece of stationery. Painted space on a Shirley Barber fairy page, and a piece from a coloring book about fairies. Cabbage dyed paper, more Barker fairies, lilac and the Song of the Beech Tree Fairy. Purple paper with a little moth here. A little botanical pocket on a collaged page, and another of the kingfisher. A kingfisher arrived and hovered over the fairies. Added some lace from a doily there, and that's on some old 1920s scrapbook paper. This little fairy sleeping in the woods with even littler fairies up here. And this is a little tuck spot, I believe. Yeah, so if you flip it over, you'll see this fairy here. She's balancing on a marble. And then inside we have this large piece of stationery with an Eric Kincaid illustration. So beautiful with these yellow fairies. And then on back it's packaging paper. So it just actually tucks in here. As so. And then on this purple page, I've just clipped one of the pages from one of the Flower Fairies books. So let me just open it up here. crocus, daffodil, daisy, double daisy. And that just clips on here with a rusted paper clip. The Song of the Gelder Rose Fairy, the Song of the Elder Fairy, cabbage dyed paper with some fabric on the side, another coloring book page from the fairy coloring book, a painted page with some fabric stitched down the side with a beaded head pin here, botanical collage, fuchsia fairy, gorse, tea dyed paper with a bit of a lace cluster, another Barker fairy here, the Song of the Beech Nut Fairy. We have a little acorn fairy down here on some coffee dyed paper. This is an Amity Bloom tab index card on some beautiful digital paper, and an Eric Kincaid fairy tag. More beautiful paper and more painted space on this fairy page. Also iridescent. This is an upper tuck pocket made from botanical paper on a children's fairy book page. The Song of the Michaelmas Daisy Fairy and the Wayfaring Tree Fairy, and I've added a little bit of a botanical snippet there, and some cabbage dyed paper with crochet vintage lace. This is from a vintage Enid Blyton book, which was the same one I mentioned before, The Adventures of Pip. And then this is eco-printed paper, a little fabric flippy bit with Cicely Mary Barker inspired fabric. More on the back, and this is from the Teal and Tattered Fairy Kit. This is a vintage floral card, fairy paper, and then we end the journal with another pocket that has this little bit, signs that fairies may be near. And in the back we have another field guide of the hummingbirds and this large pink butterfly. So that is the full journal of this Swan Fairy puzzle book. So if you are interested in this journal and you're seeing this video, it will be posted very soon in my Etsy shop. If it's not already there, it'll probably be there within about 30 minutes or so. You can find the link to my shop and other social media details down below in the description box. Don't forget to subscribe while you're here, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now.